Hey everybody, it's Lauren, and in the last segment we talked about rules versus procedures, and I outlined for you some of my classroom rules, and I had said that we would talk about procedures, but I feel like what I'm about to share with you is a critical component for you in terms of a rule that states or suggests that we need to respect all people and property, be respectful. So in my experience working with ED students, often we would have to transition them back into the mainstream. And we would go in and we would dialogue with teachers and we would ask them, okay, tell us what kind of behaviors you don't want to see. It's time for us to start being prepared, it's time for us to start preparing this student to go back into your classroom. And so we would like to have some guidelines, some non-negotiables for the student to learn and be familiar with so that they understand they can't get by with this particular behavior in your classroom. And every time, almost every time, I would hear a student, just don't be disrespectful. And I always wanted to say, what the hell does that mean? And I say that not to be crude and not to be contrary, but really and truly, what does being disrespectful mean? What does it mean to you? Because what it means to you, those of you who are out there watching this, means something completely different to me. Let me use this as an example. I remember one day, maybe my first or second year of teaching, my dad, who is also a teacher, a family of teachers, he asked me, he's like, does it bother you when kids call you miss? And I was like, no, not really. I mean, they could be calling me something else. Like, no, I never even thought about that. And he was just kind of seemed baffled. He said, I work with a lot of people who that really bothers them, and I don't know why. So using that as an example, I understand that there are some people who think that if they're not called Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so or Coach whatever, that a child is being disrespectful. But it is a generational thing for students to call you Miss. I don't have any problem with a student calling me Miss instead of Mrs. Krupp. In fact, I have this year have been given several nicknames. I had one student call me Krupp Cakes. I had another student call me Kruppy. Sometimes kids would just call me Krupp. Sometimes they would say Krupster. None of that bothered me at all because I felt like they were building a relationship with me, kind of, playing around, being silly, being free to be who they were. So, all that said, I think all of us need to take a long, hard look at what disrespect means. Now, for me, there are some things that I absolutely do not tolerate. I have a very low tolerance for, where other teachers probably don't even think twice about it. There are a few words in my classroom that I absolutely will throw a fit and make a scene about if I hear it come out of a student's mouth. And it's not the F-bomb, I'll tell you that. I worked at an alternative school. I worked with kids that were tough. I mean, they had stories that, if you're watching this, probably you cannot even imagine the home lives they came from. So, the F word and that kind of language, that doesn't bother me. But words like homo and faggot and retard and fat. Those kinds of words bother me beyond imagine. And I will tell kids, and I have told kids this, I said, I had rather you say the F word than hear you say retard, because that is so disrespectful to other people around you. Especially, you know, if a child says this in an inclusion setting where you might have an individual with cognitive disability sitting right next to them. No, 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 that is not okay. So when you're teaching your rules, you've got to define that. And if language is a thing for you, you need to make it clear. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go and, you know, list out, spell out all the words, because sometimes kids will be like, well, you know, what words? You know, will you tell us? No, 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 no. Okay. You don't have to do that. They know what words. Now, I've seen, there are some words that have become more commonplace that when I was in school, oh boy, we did not use. And you know, I'm only 29, so it's not like I've been out of school forever, but you know, we didn't say crap. Crap was a bad word. I say crap. My kids say crap. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but if you do, you need to let your kids know that. Another word that I have found has become more commonplace, and I hear teachers saying, and it's kind of, I don't know, this one is a lingerer. It's floating. It's one of those words that I think in, you know, the next 5 to 10 years, it'll probably be commonplace, is pissed. I don't say that word in my classroom because I still feel like that is more crude. So those are the subtleties that you need to identify when you're talking about disrespect. Another thing is certain behaviors that you find disrespectful. You know, if a kid comes up to me in the hallway and does this to me, you know, gives me the deuces or whatever, throws that up, I don't care. That does not offend me. Okay, you know, peace out. I'll see you later. Whatever. Okay. But I know there are other teachers that probably think that's a gang sign. And it's just a matter of ignorance. So you need to identify that. Now, obviously, if a kid flips you off, I think in most contexts and in most situations, everybody understands that's inappropriate and that's not okay. Kids rolling their eyes. That's a behavior that is irritating to me and is obnoxious, and I think it's rude, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's disrespectful. That's one that I will do intentional ignoring. I will purposefully ignore that behavior. Okay, okay, roll your eyes. I don't care. I say that in my head. So, but if, as a teacher, rolling your eyes, for a student to roll their eyes at you, if you feel like that's disrespectful, you need to identify that in the beginning. And you can do that in a variety of ways. You can have some role-playing activities or something like that. Even in high school, I think high school kids would love that. They would love to get up there and be sassy and disrespectful and, you know, kind of push the limits a little bit, but make it to where it was okay. So I think those are some of the things that you need to identify. And alongside that, following instructions when asked to do so, when asked to do something, I think you can I think you can say very blatantly and clearly that when I ask you to do something or I tell you I need you to do something, I expect you to do it. No questions asked. Now, that covers that whole idea of being disrespectful, because I think a lot of times that's what teachers mean by disrespect is, you know, the kid doesn't do what I tell them to do. They don't do what I ask them to do. I think that's generally what they mean. But some kids, you need to clarify that for some kids. Now, the next segment, I want to talk to you about getting feedback and dialoguing with children when there is a miscommunication or there are problems that the two of you and the student, are upset with each other. So we'll talk about that next time. We'll have a segment about that, because I think it is so powerful to utilize that opportunity to dialogue with the student. So we'll get into that next time. But if you want an assignment for this time, or this segment, your assignment is to just sit down and really reflect on what you think and how you feel about respect versus disrespect, the behaviors that you absolutely find disrespectful and you cannot tolerate, and how you plan to teach children how to conduct themselves in a respectful way. So think about that, and we can get in depth into that later, because I think that idea, that concept, can go really, really deep, and a lot of situations can come up that you got to troubleshoot, you got to process through it. So we will talk about that in the future. Process that, think about disrespect, and have some self-respect, and have a good afternoon. You guys take it easy. I will see you next time.